What's up everybody, my name is Takuma Matsui. I'm a producer and instructor here at 343 Labs in New York City. Ableton just released their 11.3 beta version update, and with it a new synthesizer called Drift. There's a lot of things to be excited about, but in this video we're going to focus on my top 5 features for Ableton Drift. So at a first glance, Drift feels like a modern upgrade for analog. Both Drift and analog work with simple waveform shapes, and their modulation matrix is fairly simple compared to, say, wavetable. Like other Ableton instruments, Drift's UI follows left to right in order of signal flow, starting with the oscillators, filter, envelopes, LFO, and modulation, and lastly, voice allocation at the end. Looking at the press release, it seems like Ableton tried to make Drift feel like a classic hardware synthesizer, which is a good segue into my first favorite feature, the Drift parameter. So this parameter adds a little bit of instability to the system using variations in pitch and filter cutoff between different voices of the oscillator. So let's take a listen. I have 2 sawtooth oscillators in unison with the Drift parameter at 0%. Now, check out what happens when I increase the drift value. You can hear the 2 oscillators drifting away from each other, resulting in a little bit of phase cancellation. This parameter is a lot more obvious if I play polyphony. Or if I close down the filter. Super subtle, but super cool. Let's move on to number 2. The second feature that I'm really in love with is this oscillator shape parameter. This parameter basically performs some sort of wave shaping, but it's a little bit different depending on the waveform that you're using. So I have a sawtooth here. If I turn up the shape dial, this is sort of like a hard sync sound. If I select, say, a sine wave here, this sounds more like wave folding. If I select a square wave, we hear a pulse width modulation. And there's other fun waveform shapes like this half sine, half triangle shape. And with these unconventional waveforms, the wave shaping is also a little bit unconventional. Simple but effective. Let's move on to number 3. So my third favorite feature is the oscillator gain driving the filter by default. I have 2 pulse waves here an octave apart. And here are their respective gain. Let's turn it both down. Here's oscillator 1. And here's oscillator 2. Now I'm going to close down on the filter. As I increase oscillator gain, you can hear the oscillators driving into the filter. Even if I push up the resonance, you can hear that the filter doesn't really ring out or self-oscillate. Maintaining a fairly warm sound. Again, super subtle but super cool. Let's move on to number 4. So my fourth favorite feature in Drift is envelope cycling. Drift comes with 2 envelope generators, one for the amp envelope and another for miscellaneous modulation. We can modulate some parameters here like the pitch modulation using the second envelope. or the frequency cutoff of the filter. What's cool in Drift is we can enable cycling, effectively turning this into an LFO. I'm going to keep this envelope mapped to the filter cutoff. And like an LFO, we can control its rate. But we can also change the tilt and hold parameter. Let's move on to number 5. The fifth and final feature that I want to talk about is audio rate modulation. So here I have a standard LFO, and I'm going to map it to the pitch of the oscillator. If I increase the rate, we basically have a vibrato. Now, this is pretty standard, but in Drift, we can keep pushing up the rate into audible range. This is basically frequency modulation. If I bump up the LFO amount, we can create some gnarly inharmonic timbre. On top of that, this LFO rate can be dialed in using harmonic ratios. This means that if I'm playing this middle C, which is 261 Hz, at 1:1 ratio, this LFO is also going to be moving at 261 Hz. If I increase this to 2, now the LFO is moving at twice the speed at 522 Hz. So this means we also have an FM synthesizer inside of Drift. If we change the waveform shape, let's try this, we'll get a different timbre. This is one of those awesome things that I hope becomes a standard for every VST developers out there. So that just about sums up Drift for today. I know this is not an exhaustive list of all of the features, but I hope this was helpful in getting you started playing with this new awesome synth. I hope you found this video to be helpful. My name is Takuma Matsui, here with 343 Labs in New York City. For more information on our courses in New York, Berlin, or online, check us out at 343labs.com. Thanks again for watching, and thank you Ableton developers. This is really awesome. I'll see you all next time.